Hey guys, it's time for us again to have a little moment with Jesus together. I want you to think about the word cost. How much does something cost? Now, my nephew is 5, and he has learned the word cost. When we go to the store or when we look online for something, we can say to him, that costs too much. And so he will realize that that means money, and that's something that he may not be getting that day. And what I've noticed lately is he says things like, did you uncost that? Meaning, did we buy something instead of the word buy? Because he's figured out the word cost has something to do with money. Cost doesn't always, though, have to do with money. Sometimes cost deals with how much you give of yourself. And when Jesus walked this earth, he had many, many people who listened to his teachings. We know that Jesus was an excellent teacher. And he had a lot of people who wanted to follow him. But what did that cost? That's what we're going to talk about today. Multiple times in the Bible, in Matthew, in Luke, in John, we're going to see different episodes of people who wanted to follow Jesus. When Jesus told them the cost, though, they may have changed their mind. You see, the cost, or what you have to give up to follow Jesus, is pretty great. Multiple times in the Bible, Jesus has told us that you must give your life to him. We know that. We know that he wants our hearts and our lives. So if that is the cost, don't let that be too great. Let's hear about a time when a man asked Jesus about what it would take to follow him. This man said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus answered with this: "Foxes have dens and birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." See, Jesus didn't have a permanent home. We know that. We know that he traveled while he was here in his earthly body. We know that his home in heaven is where he is now. But while he was here on this earth, he didn't have a place that he went to every single day and rested. He gave up his home and he traveled all over the area that he was doing his ministry in. So when this man said, "I will give up anything, I will follow you anywhere," he pointed out, I don't have a place to lay my head. I don't have a home. Are you willing to give up your entire home and come with me? That's a pretty big cost. Then someone else said this: "Lord, I will follow you, but first let me go and bury my father. Let me go back to my house and take care of the business of burying my father." And Jesus replied, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." See, Jesus was telling him, you have to give up everything in order to follow me and walk this path. Don't worry about all the little details of life. Worry just about me. That is a great cost. It cost a lot. And Jesus was constantly pointing out what it would take to follow him because he had so many people listening to his teachings. He had a lot of people asking about how to follow him. Jesus told the people that following him was not going to be an easy task. He said these words: "Anyone who comes to me must be willing to leave his family. You must love me most of all, more than your own life. Anyone who is unwilling to suffer cannot be my disciple." It takes our entire heart to follow Jesus. Now, I know that sounds like it costs a lot. It does. To give up your friends or your family, to give up what you believe and put your faith in Jesus and trust in him, that sounds like a massive cost. But when you give your heart to Jesus, it is worth every bit of the price. There have been times in my life where I've been around people who didn't choose the right path, and I lost friendships. I lost friendships because I tried to stand up for what was right. And then I lost my friends along the way. But you know what? As great of a cost that was, and as scary as it was to realize that I was losing a friend, I gained so much more by choosing to do what is right, by having Jesus on my side. See, the cost is great, but when we're willing to give our entire lives and our heart to Jesus, it all is worth it. We get so much more in a reward. Jesus continued and urged people to continue to choose doing what is right and continue to choose to follow him. Now, we know that Jesus is not walking this earth today. We know that he is a part of our hearts. So it's not like we were asked to follow him around the world like the people back then were. but we are asked to follow him in our own worlds. Sometimes that means that we move to a new town because God wants us to do a ministry there. Sometimes it means that God has called us to go across the world like the missionaries who go out and give their lives to tell people about Jesus. They give up what they know here in America and they travel the world telling people about Jesus. What an amazing cost they gave up, but what a substantial reward they're getting by doing Jesus' work out in the mission field. In the Bible, Jesus urged his people to think about this way. He told them a story that went along like this. If you wanted to build a tower, he said, you would first sit down and figure out the cost of how much that entire tower would cost. Otherwise, you would just lay a foundation and run out of money, and then everybody would laugh at you because all you had was just the bottom part of a tower and you wouldn't have the rest. That'd be kind of silly. He also said it this way: if you were a king, you wouldn't go to war against another king without considering whether you have enough soldiers to win the fight, whether if the war was going to be too great, or you wouldn't go to war if you weren't going to win. Makes better sense that way. You would not send men out there to fight. You would try to make peace if you realized that you didn't have enough men and energy to fight and win that war. See, when you make a plan, you have to make sure that you're prepared. He's trying to remind the people to think about every aspect of their lives. Think about how without thinking through a plan and making sure that you have everything that you need, you wouldn't go out and do it. Now, he's trying to remind them about the cost of things. He's trying to get them thinking about how much does things cost. I don't go to Walmart and spend $1,000 when I don't have $1,000 in my bank account. It doesn't work that way. Now, I know as kids, sometimes we think that our parents have all this money inside, but have you ever been inside a store and you've asked for something and your mom and dad have told you not today? That's a hard thing to hear, right? I hated hearing that. If there was something I really, really wanted, I wanted to get it right then and right there. I didn't want to have to wait. And I remember when I was in the 6th grade, I wanted a TV for my room really bad. And my mom had never allowed us to have TVs in our room. She told me that if I saved up my money, I could buy myself a TV. And so every ounce of money I could collect, I put away and I put away and I put away until I was able to buy a TV. And do you know how thankful I was for that TV? It meant so much more to me because it was my own money. I didn't let anybody get close to it. I wiped it down and kept it clean. That TV lasted me until I moved out and lived on my own. It was the best little TV. It lasted for years and years and years. It worked even better in my mind because it had taken my own money to pay for it. I had saved up for it and it was special. Jesus wants you to understand the cost. And he says these words to us. If you are not willing to give up everything you have, you cannot follow me. Every single thing that we give up goes straight to him. Now that sounds like a pretty big cost. It sounds like something that is going to take a lot out of us. And it does. To follow Jesus is hard. It's not easy. Sometimes we're in the wrong. Sometimes we don't have anybody on our side. Sometimes we have to stand up and do something big in a world that doesn't understand us. But it is worth every single cost every time. I love you guys. And let me go chase after the dog.